everybody, this is Marian Cowing Owen.
And this is David Owen.
And this is You Show Me Yours, the podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and TV that they loved before the first date. And today, I was made to watch Friday the 13th.
That's right. Friday the 13th on the part of the Halloween Spooktacular. And you're hearing this episode on Wednesday the 13th.
Close enough.
So sure. Probably close enough.
If Wednesday is your... I always think of the Garfield joke when he's like, oh my God, it's the worst day ever. It's Monday the 13th. So whatever day of the week is your worst, when it's the 13th, that's terrible.
There you go.
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, which is, of course, the 1980 horror slasher camp killer flick.
Okay, I am mystified. Why was this a hit?
Well, we'll get into that, but let's do the business up front.
Okay.
So if you haven't seen this movie somehow, spoilers for this movie, especially if you don't know the twist of this movie.
A lot of people die.
And a lot of people die, yeah. This is a movie about an ill-fated, cursed, if you will, with a death curse summer camp that is in the process of reopening, and people die, shenanigans ensue, and people die. And for some reason, for the next 40 years, people continue to insist on trying to reopen this camp.
I was going to say, is that the plot of all the other movies? Somebody is trying to reopen it, and...
Some of them.
Okay.
Some of them.
I feel like that could really be a franchise now, because you know how in every town there's always this one property that keeps opening as something new, and then it closes and then it's something else, and like every 6 months it's something different.
Yeah.
So is there like a horror movie to be made about, the restaurant?
Right.
That couldn't stay open.
Right.
It wasn't anything to do about the theme. It wasn't anything about the monkeys on the wall.
Right.
It was just that there was a serial killer who haunted it.
And there's a crazy old man that's just like, no one's ever going to successfully open a business in that old Bob Evans.
And somebody was like, no, people love monkeys. We'll put them all over the wall. It'll be great.
Yes. I like your inside joke just for the two of us.
Yes.
And anyone else who lived in Greensboro circa 2006.
7? No, seriously, y'all. There was a restaurant called Rum Monkeys.
Yeah.
And as far as I can remember, the theme was just monkeys.
And even not monkeys, because there were like orangutans and stuff that aren't, that there were also apes in this monkey-themed restaurant.
Primates of any sort. Were there like monkey-themed dishes?
Yeah, all the dishes were like monkey. They had like monkey-themed names and stuff. I don't remember. We went there one time.
So it's like the macaque meatballs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unsurprisingly, I think it lasted like 6 months probably.
Yeah,
and it was this prime location right near a movie theater. You would think it would be great.
Yep.
But it did not. Anyway, Camp Crystal Lake is the Rum Monkeys of camps.
Right. It is the abandoned Bob Evans of summer camps.
Bob Evans is the shit.
No,
don't you talk about Bob Evans in the same breath as Rum Monkeys.
Not enough people agree with you on that.
Oh, man.
Sorry to say.
Yeah.
This movie spawned a whole franchise. I think it's like 10 or 12 movies. There was a television show.
What?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No. Yeah. When?
So it was in the 90s, I think, or late 80s.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly, but
I was not paying attention at the time.
Both Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th had television shows. Both of which, as I recall, I believe Robert Englund and or Freddy featured prominently in like the interstitial segments of the Nightmare on Elm Street show, but I don't think it was necessarily about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Wow. Okay.
But the Friday the 13th television show was about not even anything to do with Crystal Lake or Jason or any of it. The concept was curses. Because Camp Crystal Lake has a death curse.
Sure.
So that was the idea. It was this shop that had cursed items. And it was like the stories of the cursed items.
Oh, geez.
Later on, like Sci-Fi Channel did a show, I think called like Warehouse 13, which was basically the same concept, but they redid it. It was like the same kind of concept of like all these supernatural, weird items have a crazy story to them and all this stuff. So yeah, there's a huge franchise attached to this, and it's Jason fought Freddy at one point.
Yeah.
There's a ton of stuff. So yeah, and some of that stuff we'll talk about as we go, inevitably. So I want to start out though with, did you know about the killer?
I don't remember. I want to say I knew that Mrs. Voorhees was part of it. I feel like, I don't know. I don't remember. Not exactly.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So that was like the big surprise. And a lot of people, like, if you're coming into this thing now,
yeah,
and you've watched and you're watching it in reverse chronological order,
yeah,
you're going to get a shock when you get back to this movie. And yeah. So yeah, no Jason. Well, Jason is in this movie. He is featured in this movie. You see him drown, and then at the end you see him, or do you? It's hard to say, because at this point Jason should have been in like his late 20s, early 30s if he died in 57.
Yeah.
And we are in present.
Yeah.
Which would be 1980. This kid should be, he was 10 or 12 or whatever when he died. Yeah, this kid should be like 30. But the kid that comes out at the end of the movie and drags our final girl under the water still looks to be a preteen or a teen.
I didn't get a very good look at him.
He's deformed.
Yes, a lot.
Yes. And that changes to various levels of deformity over the course of the series.
Okay.
He gets more and more deformed as he's damaged over the course of the series, but also in 2 and 3, you kind of see his face a little bit, and that is there's some differences, and then on beyond that, there are some differences in what the actual deformity is, whether he has like some little weird wispy hairs or no hair, or what. Okay,
so is this his spirit? Or is he didn't drown, he's just some lake creature? Or
at the end of the movie, I don't think you're really intended to know.
Okay. Oh, awesome. You know how I love to have things left unclarified.
I think it was just this sort of like, hey, I don't know, this might be cool. This movie might make some money, and we just cut off the head of the real killer. So maybe we need some way to...
Okay. So all the killings in this were Mrs. Voorhees.
Yes.
Oh,
now,
Lord.
There's a theory out there that Jason actually, and this is like an internet theory, like this is like a Matt Pat, that's just a theory kind of theory. Like that basically that there are timing impossibilities that occur, especially towards the end of the movie.
Sure.
That would lend itself to a theory that some of the kills are done by Jason and some of the kills are done by Mrs. Voorhees.
Mm-hmm.
So the specific sequence of events happens at the end of the movie. It is the final girl, Alice, is freaking out, and because she's just saw Bill killed, or she saw that he's dead, and the body of one of the other teen counselors gets thrown through the window.
Right.
Seconds later, headlights flash in the windows, and she runs out thinking that it is Steve, the owner of the camp.
Yeah.
And instead, Mrs. Voorhees gets out of a Jeep that just pulled up.
Sure.
That is, the timing on that is extremely suspect. First of all, as we see Mrs. Voorhees, once she's in an actual fight with another female, is not exactly physically gifted in the ways of strength.
She's really not.
She's kind of like a frail 60-something, not frail, but she's like an average older woman.
That was a very bad fight.
Well, sure. But
and I feel like at some point we saw the killer's leg, and those were not her legs.
Well, sure. So is that then someone else had to throw that body through the window because she wasn't physically capable of doing it, and could not have then got in a Jeep and pulled up to make it happen. Also, she's all over the camp. So she's killing Bill at the same time that she's, shortly after or before she's intercepting Steve coming back to the camp at the sign. Steve is definitely killed by Mrs. Voorhees because he recognizes her. Says, "Oh, what are you doing here?"
Yeah.
And, you know, other people throughout the movie, like there's no doubt, I think the first 2 teens that are killed in 58 are killed by her because they seem to not be threatened when they see her. Like if you saw a full grown, well, at that time it would have been, you know, not a full grown man if it was Jason, but.
Well, and they seem like, they're doing the kind of reaction that you would do if your mother caught you making out.
Exactly. So there are theories that Jason is assisting in the background, which may or may not be reinforced by following movies in terms of like what he knows or doesn't know or is capable of or isn't capable of. Because they're, you know, he's got some form of disability, physical, mental, who knows. And so, what he would have needed direction to assist. So you can go down a rabbit hole on YouTube if you want to, of people who make lots of videos about Friday the 13th.
Wow.
The series, the series of movies.
Of all the horror movie franchises, this is not the one that I would invest my time into.
Why is that?
I don't know. This just felt like an after-school special.
Well, sure. I mean,
except, you know, the message is don't be a camp counselor, don't get killed. But it was don't
have sex, don't smoke weed. Like,
you know what though? You know what I noticed? So we were talking last time about the final girl is usually a virgin, or that's the trope, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It seemed implied that Alice and Steve had been getting it on.
Or that he had tried unsuccessfully.
Maybe. Okay.
But there are comments like she says, well, that's what you looked like last night, when he finds a drawing of himself. And he's like, I really look like that. She says, that's what you looked like last night. Like, last night after coitus or what? Like,
I couldn't. I was like, is that his O face? What?
And there's also some weird stuff, if you really want to go there, where Alice is coded as gay. She has short hair, which at the time would have been definitely coded that way.
It was like a Dorothy Hamill thing. But
yes, but also she says she talks with him about leaving, and it's some personal stuff that I got to figure out, and I got to go back to California. So it's just, I've seen people sort of advancing this. And then also there's a moment between her and I think it's Betsy, the one that has the idea to play strip Monopoly.
Yeah.
There's a point where Alice is about to take her shirt off and then she doesn't. They get stopped. And Betsy makes a comment of sort of, oh, just when it was getting interesting or something like that. So there's this, you know, there are themes. If you want to find themes, there are themes all around,
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, so it is possible. And like we talked about a little bit with Nightmare on Elm Street, most of these sort of tropes of the horror genre are sort of retroactive. Like in a lot of ways, it was like sometime, well, let's say like with Scream, but before Scream, really, people had kind of looked back and gone like, oh, this is a common thing. One movie did it, so other movies did it because it was kind of an expected thing. And no one really had a message behind it, like virginal girls make it out. It just like happened to be. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Absolutely. Some of these movies had the message that the virgin is the one that survives for a reason because fornication is bad or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can kind of see some primordial sort of tropes here, but, yeah, you say like this isn't the series you would necessarily hang your hat on, but like
no,
this series goes some places as it goes forward. So
okay, like what?
So Jason is at first flesh and blood.
Sure.
Right. The next 2 movies. So in the second movie, he wears a burlap sack with a hole in it.
Okay.
Just for one eye, because his deformity or whatever. So he wears a burlap sack with just like one hole in it. And then at the end of the third movie, he gets the hockey mask. So we're basically a full 3 movies into this series before he actually gets the hockey mask. Like he puts it on at the end of the third movie, basically.
Okay.
And there's I'm by no means a Friday the 13th historian. He gets killed. He gets buried. They dig up his corpse, and while they're digging it up, it gets struck by lightning, and Corey Feldman, Feldman is witnessing someone dig up his body, and it gets struck by lightning, and it becomes he becomes then this unkillable zombie. the events of the first
awesome.
Up until then, he is played as human, just can take a lot of damage and is inhuman strength, and all these things. But then from that point on, he is basically a zombie. He's a walking. He's decaying. His body gets his flesh kind of grays over time, and he there's Tommy Jarvis is a whole thing where he poses as Jason for like a movie, kind of like we talked about with Freddy. There was a movie where there was just a demon who liked taking the form of Freddy for like the New Nightmare or whatever. There's a stand-in Jason for a movie. Then there's somebody has like psychic powers, like psionic, like mental. Then he goes to Manhattan because that's cool. That's the point when you find out that Camp Crystal Lake also somehow has an outlet to the sea because he hitches a ride on a tanker that happens to be leaving Camp Crystal Lake, or like Crystal Lake in general.
Sure.
He goes to hell. At some point he becomes like this force that can like disembody and take over other people. I think that's in Jason Goes to Hell. He goes to space. He gets frozen, cryogenically frozen, and then gets awakened in the far future. And nanotechnology rebuilds him as this like monster robot Jason.
Okay, this is out of hand.
That's Jason X, if you want to watch that one.
Oh my Lord. And all this because his mother did not pay for swimming lessons for him.
Well, I think it's implied that he really couldn't swim. Like he should have never been allowed to go into the whole thing. They flesh out that story a little bit more, that she was, he was maybe the product of incest or rape or et cetera.
Struggling single mother. I got that.
She's a struggling single mother. She's just taking this job at this camp, and he's basically getting to stay there for free, but the counselors don't pay enough attention to him because he's special needs.
He's a poor kid.
And he's a poor kid. So yada, yada, yada.
Children to swim, folks.
So this series goes all over the place. Like it's
you're not making me want to invest any more time in it.
What I'm saying
sounds bonkers.
If you wanted to make a YouTube career of any movie franchise, like this is one of the ones that gets pretty far up there.
Yeah.
So tell me what are some of your thoughts on the movie? Just what do you like? What do you don't like?
It was surprisingly efficient in how it just dispatched everybody. Just boom, 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 boom. And a lot of them, there wasn't even this tension buildup. It was just walking around in the dark. It's a little creepy. Turn the corner. Boom. Axe to the face.
Yeah.
I thought they missed a real opportunity because Brenda, they'd had this foreshadowing where she's on the archery range.
Yeah.
And douchebag Ned shoots an arrow to scare her.
Yeah.
And then she's out in the rain and she's at the archery range and we cut and we don't see her killed. Why is she not killed by like a dozen arrows hitting her at once? That is
flying in.
It writes itself. And then we don't see how she's killed. She's just tossed through the window, but Bill is killed by the arrows. Like, this is what a script supervisor is for, to be like, connect the dots. I don't, it's just.
Yes, anyway. Yes. Bit of a missed opportunity for sure.
And I was, as I said when we were watching it, douchebag Ned, I would have enjoyed him being killed because he was terrible.
Yeah. And he is one of like two off-screen, two off-screen killings.
We don't even, he just wanders follows this, I don't know, weird figure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was feeling sorry for him for half a second because he's seeing the other two make out and he's like, yeah. But nobody will date you because you're a douchebag.
Right.
Previously he had faked drowning so that someone would give him mouth to mouth. That's just vile.
Yes.
I feel like Mrs. Voorhees should have killed him just for that because that's awful. But we don't see him killed. And I would have actually sort of enjoyed that. I think I'm not supposed to. I think in the 80s you were supposed to be like, oh, that's Ned. Oh, he's a kidder.
He does the war cries and dresses up like a...
Yeah, no, he's a man-child with a raging libido, and he's annoying. That's not cute. But yeah, we didn't see all that, which is fine. I don't enjoy like gore for the sake of gore, but these were very quick deaths, not a lot of blood.
Yeah, gory, but restrained is how I describe some of them.
Yeah, and if the point of, I don't know, some, like we talked about, Freddy likes to sort of play with his prey.
Yeah.
Right? The Voorhees duo, that's not their plan. They just want to kill people.
No, right.
Outright. It's very quick.
She is very careful. And the one thing I will say about this is I do find her overall plausible as the murderer because she basically always gets everybody by surprise.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't really brute force anybody until the end when she tries to brute force. The one kill she tries to brute force is the one that she loses on.
Yeah. The person who knows she's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, she fools which I forget her name, the one that was going to be the cook, lulls her into a false sense of security with her old lady charms, and then chases her down. But she had already jumped from a car, a moving vehicle, and was limping.
Yeah.
She surprises Steve. She surprises, assumes she surprises Ned. She has at the archery range, she has her at a disadvantage.
Yes. Oh my God. And she gets Kevin Bacon. Oh yeah,
that's the best. Oh! That's the best one.
Oh, that was gnarly.
Yeah. Oh. And I think there's also an argument to be made, like the hand that grabs his head definitely isn't an old lady hand.
Yeah, and it's a plaid shirt, which is not what she's wearing later, but who knows?
And the force that would be required to drive the arrowhead through, it's a metal arrowhead, which is fine. Like it's one of the razor-tipped heads through a mattress and through Kevin Bacon. And other things, like she had to get Ned up onto the top bunk.
Yeah.
Because he's on the top bunk during that whole sex scene.
Yeah.
Dead on the top bunk during that whole scene. So, she had to get his body up there. So there's some good scenes, some good killing. It's this won't mean anything to you, but it's Tom Savini, who is the guy who did all of the John Romero Living Dead movies.
Okay.
And he has appeared actually in several things. He was, you may or may not remember, we watched the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead in the theaters a long time ago, probably on a date or something.
Yeah.
He was in that, I believe. You would know him. He's been in many things if you had seen any of the things he was in. Like, it's kind of like always a thing of like, hey, Tom Savini's in this movie. He is, one of the ones that really perfected like gore and, gross out type stuff, weird, like eyeballs hanging out of people. He figured out how to have all the zombie extras, eating weird meat that looked like human flesh. And so, he did the special effects for this. So, good. I mean, it's all pretty darn convincing for what would have been at the time a low budget movie. He gets a lot of mileage out of it, out of the little bits, like the arrow goes through, then there's some blood that gushes up, and like nothing. There's a lot of throat slitting, in this movie, which I guess is kind of twofold. Like people can't, I guess they can't scream after that, or if you do it right, I don't think the Hollywood throat slash really renders your vocal cords.
I prefer to think about throat slitting as little as possible.
Oh, okay. That's kind of one of my nightmare ways to die. Sure. I mean, I think for most people.
Yes.
But other people want to think about it so that they can be prepared to counteract it. So, just a difference of opinion.
No.
We'll agree to disagree on the amount that one should think about throat slitting.
Okay, wait. You were always freakishly prepared for these very unlikely situations. Have you thought about how to dissuade someone from slitting your throat?
No.
Okay. I am surprised because you've thought about a lot of other things that I think are very unlikely to happen.
If I was ever in a place where the slitting of my throat seemed more likely than not, I'm thinking like chainmail turtleneck, something like that. Like, just some sort of basic level of protection.
Sure,
is necessary.
You would wear. Wear one.
Yeah. Okay. So if I was like going into an area that was notorious for throat slitting, I might at that point.
Are there areas that are notorious for throat slitting?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like,
you're just like, don't go to Atlanta. They slit throats there.
Yeah, like
sorry, Atlanta.
Don't go to Slit Town. They two things go on in Slit Town.
Ew. Oh no. You did not just make the joke. I think you did.
What's the other one? Like, you made the joke in your own head.
Ew. Okay, don't go to Glasgow. That's where they have the Glasgow smile. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, wait, actually, no. I'm making it on my face. It's not on your face.
No, isn't that actually the thing that is that's not the Glasgow smile? The Glasgow smile is ear to ear.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you're right. Well,
yeah. But yeah, as you mentioned, a very young Kevin Bacon is in this movie, and I just wrote Baby Bacon on the notes.
Yeah.
I just I know there are people that watch this movie and don't even realize that's Kevin Bacon.
Really?
Well, because a lot of people haven't seen Footloose and all these movies that he did when he was younger, and they've only sort of seen modern, like from the 2000s forward.
Footloose? Oh, geez.
It happens. But yeah, this is a great early Kevin Bacon role.
Yeah. And as with baby Johnny Depp, good guy. Sorry to see him go.
Yeah.
He seemed like a generous lover.
Yes. In the movie, yes.
Not in real life, you're saying?
I don't know. I'm not aware of any accusations currently against Kevin Bacon.
He's been married to the same woman forever, so I'm thinking it's fine.
All right. So we were watching this movie, and you when Crazy Old Ralph came on the screen, you were mentioning that you got some Cabin Fever vibes.
Yes.
Cabin Fever, of course, is a horror
2004.
Yeah, like 2004. It's got the
flesh-eating virus.
It's flesh-eating virus. It's got the kid from Boy Meets World in it.
Oh yeah.
The friend, not the not the savage.
And the girl is shaving her legs, and her flesh is like falling away, and she keeps shaving. Like that's
And so that's that's one of the things that there's like the crazy old man who warns the kids that they're going to die is like, this is kind of the source for that.
Well, there was something about just the small town, and it's very idyllic, and there's this long front porch there, and And I haven't seen Cabin Fever in 15 years since the first time we watched it. So it's not like I saw it last week and it reminds me of it. It's just
but Crazy Ralph was kind of the guy that started that. His name is Ralph, right?
I think so.
He kind of started that trope. I mean, to the point where you haven't seen, actually maybe at the end of all this you haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, have you?
No.
Right. So Cabin in the Woods is basically a movie that it's another Scream-esque meta horror movie. And they actually have a crazy old man that warns them about, going up the mountain or whatever. So this is kind of the beginning of that, this is one of the solidifiers of the final girl sort of narrative type thing, actually pretty much all of the movies that we watch will be final girl movies pretty much. Or in that sort of genre of final girl movies where there is at minimum one female protagonist who survives to the end of it. So yeah, a lot of history and tropes being established in these movies, which is kind of the reason I picked most of these, because I think there are alternative movies that I could have picked for this set of movies, but I think these four they tread different enough waters. I think they're all three of the four slasher movies, but they all kind of they have their own. They all started a franchise that all sort of many movies, and so kind of there were a couple of others I could have picked that didn't quite fit. So I'm glad that we're going with these, and we're starting to see some sort of commonalities between them. I mean, I don't think there's a lot more to talk about. We'll maybe stretch it out a little bit further, but Yeah. What else you got about Friday the 13th?
Oh, yeah. So I did. So this it specifically says June 13th.
Oh, yes.
1980.
Yeah.
I don't have a calendar with me to check the math, but my brother was born in May 1980. And based on what I think about the day of the week that he was born, I don't think that there was a Friday the 13th in 1980. So I call shenanigans. Like that seems, because for a while, wasn't it that every time there was a Friday the 13th, they'd come out with a new Friday the 13th movie? So if there wasn't a Friday the 13th in June 1980, why did it?
I don't know. And also, I don't know that this movie was released in June. It's possible that this movie was, that July was when they were
August.
Right.
Yeah,
so I don't know if there was. I don't think the Friday the 13th had to be in June. Although they are saying Friday the 13th. That's probably the last thing to discuss. Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
This movie could be named anything else.
Yeah.
Like there's
nothing about, yeah.
I mean, basically the way that this movie establishes a connection to Friday the 13th is there is a scene in a cop car that is very clearly someone going, oh man, we didn't say anything about Friday the 13th. Yeah. We got to film a scene where a cop says, oh, it's Friday the 13th. And we have a lot more murders on Friday the 13th. Yeah. And it's a full moon. And oh yeah, that kid that was killed at the camp in 1957, his birthday was Friday the 13th. Isn't that all crazy?
Yeah.
That like, it's like the weirdest mid to late movie title drop.
Yeah.
And it is just literally them going, oh crap, like Friday the 13th.
Shoehorn it in somehow.
Yeah. And I also, I don't remember for sure, but I feel like I heard at some point, this was like a Snakes on a Plane scenario where someone was like, Friday the 13th is such a cool name for a movie. Now I got the rights to
Make a movie about it.
I got the logo made. And now we got to figure out what is a movie about Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Well, it would have been pretty easy, I think, to have, I guess, the final girl then be really superstitious, like avoiding black cats and walking under ladders and,
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like there would have been a much better way to shoehorn it in. But, Monday morning quarterback, whatever.
Well, because the justification for the Friday the 13th series not being about Crystal Lake or Jason Voorhees and being about curses is that Friday the 13th was always kind of a series about curses. Only in so much as Ralph says it's a death curse 5 times in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, no one is superstitious. No one is going, oh, the full moon. Like there's one shot, maybe 2 of the full moon in the whole movie. There's no mysticism.
The townspeople don't seem worried about it being Friday the 13th. It's just keep the camp closed. Bad things happen to people there. Nothing bad happens to people here.
Right. And it's like, they say there's Jason drowned. 2 counselors were killed in 1958. And then there were some fires in the 1960s. And that is why the camp is cursed.
Yeah. And Steve had put $25,000 into the camp, but they still are nailing down gutters.
Right. Yeah.
Before campers come. Like, what did you do with the money?
Well, I mean, I guess if the stuff is, so first of all, if there was a fire, some of it maybe was damaged.
Well, yeah.
And if this stuff's been sitting unused since, 1962 or whatever, maybe, I don't know.
That place looked pretty ratty. I need to see some work orders to just justify this $25K.
Yeah. I've got I need to see your, some of your receipts and budget statements. And
maybe that's it. Mrs. Voorhees is actually an accountant.
I need to know.
And she's like, you squandered your money. I can't let you.
You're wasting your money.
Yes.
So Friday the 13th, just tenuous at best, is the link for this eventually supernatural killer, hockey mass murderer, and Friday the 13th.
I mean, as with many things, I think the writers were just in a room with a lot of shrooms.
Yeah.
Or as they keep saying in the movie, grass,
hashish.
Yeah.
There's that one cop. Like there are a few characters in this movie and a few interactions.
Yeah.
Where you feel like someone had written these for a different movie.
Right.
There's a motorcycle cop that shows up and he's just like, what are you kids doing around here? You're smoking the pot, the reefer, you getting high on the wacky tobacco, and like, And they're like, no sir, like, and then that guy is just like a character. Then he drives off. He does like
seen again.
It's a really unnecessary long shot of him driving his motorcycle down, doing a U-turn, and then speeding off to motorcycle sound effects that don't at all match what he's doing. Like the motorcycle sound effects are all like wee wee wee, and he's just like slowly turning around with his foot on the ground and then puttering up the drive.
There were a lot of tertiary characters. Like I was looking at the credits, and it was a lot of people who probably had like 2 lines, if that.
Yeah.
But it was a lot.
Yeah, there are all the people in the diner or whatever. There's the one waitress that is all about Steve, and that lady is right out of Central Casting. Just like he's like, "What do I owe?" She's like, "A night on the town, sweetheart."
Yeah, that's. I was like, "What is happening here?" I'm in a way, I'm a little bit surprised that didn't end up being Mrs. Voorhees. Like she's in plain sight the whole time. She was giving us lemon meringue pie and then killing us.
Yeah. Or there's at the people at the beginning at the, I don't know, whatever it is, general store or whatever, the other diner in town or whatever, where where she picks up a ride, the cook lady picks up a ride. There's the lady behind the counter, and there's the townsfolk who, when she says Camp Crystal Lake, are just like, ooh. Yeah. And then there's the skeezy old truck driver who cops a feel when she gets in the car.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was.
And then
I feel like I'd seen that actor in something.
Oh, I'm sure. And then there's the whole back and forth between them where he's like, God, them kids these days. And she's just, that's the same problem with my nieces. So, just like, this character is another right out of Central Casting, quote unquote, kind of character. There was something else I was thinking about. I like the story, sort of quote unquote story, not that I know all the details of it, of Betsy Palmer, who plays Mrs. Voorhees. That she was like this actress from the 50s. She played in a bunch of stuff in the 50s and was kind of like a classic Hollywood actress. And then her career just sort of ended in the 60s. And, she tells a story in an interview that I watched. Like she gets a call and they're like, hey, you want to be in another movie? And she was like, yeah. I was like, a movie? to be back in Hollywood and, back in the movies. And they were like, no, actually it shoots in New Jersey and it's like 10 days of work. But she did it. She was apparently a good sport about it. And it relaunched her career. Like she never really got back to starring in movies and stuff, but she did all of the evening shows of the 80s, Love Boat and Chips and probably Fantasy Island. Like, she hit, it kind of just gave her enough of a resurgence that she was able to like spend another 20 years. And I knew she was even into some stuff into the early 2000s, and kept kind of trading on that Scream Queen horror movie kind of thing, and did a few, not parodies, but what like knockoff, Friday the 13th type movies later in her career and stuff. So, just an interesting, like they needed kind of like the actress that did all the lines for in The Exorcist for Reagan when she had the demon voice.
I don't know.
It's just an older Hollywood actress who just like was literally like chain smoking the whole time and like, and like drinking weird stuff to get her voice all like drinking egg yolks and stuff to get her voice all like.
Ew. Okay, no, thank you. That's ew.
Yeah, so it's like there's some fun trivia like that surrounding this movie. Like, this kind of relaunched her career and launched this whole franchise. And
well, good for her.
Yeah. Good for her.
Yeah.
I hope she's still alive, but she's probably not.
Probably not. I don't know what I was expecting, but not this really.
Yeah. What had you kind of heard, or what were you expecting?
Honestly, I kind of get the horror franchises mixed up sometimes because I'd only seen the one Nightmare on Elm Street. I think I've seen one of the Halloweens that you showed me, but it's nothing to do with Michael Myers.
3. Yeah, we watched 3 in preparation. Like that's one of our practice episodes. Maybe we'll post that someday.
Oh, that was a time.
That's a heck of a movie.
That was a time.
Yeah. Yeah. When that was kind of like one of the things in that episode of like, There's no Michael Myers in this movie. Like, I bet you were waiting the whole time for Michael Myers to show up.
Yes.
And there's no Michael Myers.
Yes. But I haven't seen any Michael Myers ones. So it's all just like in the peripheral. Like I know they exist, but so I get them all mixed up sometimes. So I didn't really have
like Camp Crystal Lake.
Yeah. And I think
Hockey
I've
Mask.
seen, I don't know if I knew Hockey Mask, honestly.
Okay.
Which is the villain where you see it in memes all the time. It's like somebody just like peeps out from behind a hedge and is just like watching. And it just, the text usually just says soon.
I mean, that's probably Michael Myers. I mean, I'm thinking of a specific scene in the first Halloween.
Okay.
Where he like peeks out, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. I think it might be, but I feel like, and there's some scene where it's back at the camp and a girl is stuck in a boat and her boyfriend's in the water and he's getting killed from beneath. And then she's like, the boat sucked it. I don't know. I've seen something like that. One of those like most scary horror scenes. And it was
Maybe?
that. Okay. Yeah. Not very much is what I knew about this. And so I didn't really have clear expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just, it was very economical with the time and not a lot of character development and not a lot of tension in the killings and just boom, 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 they're dead. And it was...
yes and no. I would say that there's a lot of setup. I think there's a fair amount of character development, if not a lot of specific... like you don't know a lot about these people's hopes and dreams.
Well, and I suppose you don't need character development for people who are going to be killed. But...
Right. But I mean, like Alice wants to be an artist and she's, kind of has maybe a thing with Steve. And then there's Ned and he's a schmuck. And there's Kevin Bacon and his girl and they're, yada, yada. So, I mean, there's a fair amount. And I do think, I think there's some tension. I think it's the kind of thing. So one thing, I don't know if you noticed or not, but there's the music for this, which is just, legendary, all that.
Yeah.
And there was an interview that I read with, I think is it Manfredini? I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but the guy that did the music, there's an interview with him where he says, like, if you watch this movie and you notice, and I had read this interview before watching it, so I took note this time. Anytime there's music, specifically like the Baronet score, that's when the killer is about. That they don't ever use music as a fake out. And one of the scenes that he mentions specifically for keying on this is the scene where there's the arrow shot, where she's setting up the archery range and then an arrow gets shot. There's no music. There's no stinger for that jump scare of the arrow coming in. And, that was what he's saying. Like, we specifically, we kept the music out because we never wanted, because they knew they had this kind of shaky first person camera thing. So they never wanted you to think that this just handheld shot that they had, like establishing shot, was supposed to be the killer. So anytime that the shaky handheld shot was supposed to be the killer, there was some amount of music behind it.
Interesting.
Or if the killer was supposed to be lurking off screen, there was always some amount of music behind it. So that was pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, this score is legendary. It owes a lot to like the Psycho score. It's got a lot of that, but they do their own thing. And then of course the breathing and stuff is all like really iconic. A lot of franchise or a lot of horror movies owe a lot to that score.
Okay.
For sure. But, but not Nightmare on Elm Street, because that's just pure techno bliss. But yeah, I think that's probably it. There isn't really anything else I want to say. I mean, I think that last point I did want to make, that I do think the movie is kind of restrained in a lot of ways, like we had talked about with the killings and stuff. And it is kind of it's there are less killings. Because at one point you made the comment of like, is this all going to happen in one night? Yeah, it's all going to happen in one night. Like everybody gets killed and there you go. And it is kind of, it sort of set a stage for that sort of traumatic slasher trapped in a whatever kind of movie. So, and I think people had to go, it all couldn't be so sort of, I feel like plotting is not the right word necessarily, but it couldn't all be this sort of, there's a lot of room for stuff to breathe in this. The death curse, you know, like nobody gets killed for like the first half of the movie almost, maybe outside of the one, the cook getting killed.
Yeah.
You know, the kills don't come very, it takes a while to get there, and then they kind of ramp up, and there's not a lot of unrealistic sort of, why aren't these people just leaving? Like, they don't even know anybody's dead. There's a point where the last two survivors, Alice and what's his name, Bill, they try to leave, but there's a problem with the car. And then they're just like, oh, I mean, at this point, all we know is that everybody's missing, or that we can't find these people. And they could just be playing a prank on us because we're all crazy teens, and Steve's supposed to be back any minute. So we'll just hang out. It'll be cool. So there's not a lot of that, like, why are you being so stupid? Why are you going to check on the generator by yourself?
Well, I did think, so Alice has knocked out Mrs. Voorhees and runs to the car and finds Annie dead in the front seat and runs away screaming. I'm like, unless you want to end up like her,
right?
Get over yourself and go.
Just push her aside and just get in the car.
Like, she's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, like that's a good scare and all, but like that could have been coupled with like the keys also not being in the car or something. Like, you're removing the car as an option, but you're doing it in that way. Yeah. I do think the actress that plays Alice, I think she does a good job of giving a very human performance in how she reacts to all this stuff. Like, she's freaking out after she sees Bill, and she's not necessarily, she's like running around, like she grabs a big fork at one point to try to defend herself.
She's got her head kind of on straight, like she's blocking the door
but she's also like frantic and manic and just like moving, like, she's throwing stuff. She like comes up with this real quick improvised way the door is a pull outward door and it won't lock. So she throws this rope over the rafters and like ties off the doorknob and then throws a bunch of stuff in front of it.
Yeah. She's not stupid.
Right. But I think she's
thing with the car side.
I think she's freaking out in a way that I think really is pretty realistic to how your average teen faced with this situation might do it. So that versus some of these performances that you'll see in later years from other people that I don't think have that sort of same human, like when the body's thrown through the window, like then she goes into like total freak out mode. Mm-hmm.
I mean, relatable,
like you would. All right. And I think that's a really good, it's a really good performance. I was thinking that again, watching this for the first time in a long time, that, everything she does on some level makes sense. And I think even running away from the car on some level makes sense because she's just freaking out. Like,
sure.
She's thinking, oh, this is my way out. Then here's another dead body. Mm-hmm. Oh crap. What else might be in here? I don't know whatever she's thinking. The point is that she's not necessarily thinking straight.
Well, sure.
So yeah, I just, that's a good performance. I think it lends some sort of realism is not the word, but you can kind of see her whole arc is like, she's not incapable of defending herself. And then when it comes down to sort of fight or flight, she tries flight. She's maybe less successful. And then in the end is like able to fight this old woman basically and defend herself, with a somewhat comical head chop off murder at the end where I love the hands are like, where's my head?
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Someone is wearing this, prosthetic stump of a neck, and they just bring their hands up like, oh, I think because everybody expects. I think that's what seeing someone get their head chopped off would be like. Like you would just be like, like, where's my head? Oh no.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, I think that's all there is that needs to be said about Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, personally, if you are like, let me catch up on my classic horror movies, I would say this one can be farther down on the list, personally.
Oh,
for sheer enjoyment. Like, if you are a historian or, whatever. But I will say, not my fave.
Yeah. And I will say this movie gets harder to watch as it ages.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yes. And part of it's the pacing. And part of it is also all of the movies that you've probably seen. If you're in your 20s and you've been watching modern horror movies for 5 or 6 years, you've seen so many things that are cribbing from this and were inspired by this and are straight up paying homage to this. And it's going to be tough to go back to, for sure.
I suppose it's like, I don't know, when I watch Psycho, like I watched the original and I didn't notice it, but then when they did the remake, like the shot for shot but modern, you know, and I was like, oh my god, this pacing is so slow, and I didn't notice it when it was in black and white. But yeah, you can acknowledge that it's a classic and influential and all these things, and be like, oh, it's so dull.
Oh yeah.
You know,
but whatever you do,
not my cup of tea.
Don't watch the modern remake. I haven't actually seen it, but from what I understand, Jason is the killer in the modern remake of Friday the 13th.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant Psycho. I was like, but so I just told you I did. What is?
I think it's I love the Psycho remake, in part because it was what was the director? Gus Van Sant, the guy who did was he the Good Will Hunting guy? Or I think. Basically he got to write his own ticket in Hollywood.
Yeah,
and what he said was, I want to do a color, shot for shot, exact remake of Psycho.
It was interesting as an exercise. I don't know if I would have put the money of a Hollywood studio behind it. I love his reasoning. Like, when you see him in interviews, basically his reasoning was preservation. You know, he was trying to say, like, so I think, unfortunately, he ended up sort of, his reasoning was flawed ultimately, because he wanted to preserve Psycho for future generations, but his entire plan to preserve it was just to reshoot it exactly in color with modern actors. And everyone was like, the original is way better. Let's go back to that.
Right, exactly.
So it was preserved in a way.
Right. So it was just, it was weird, because the real way to preserve it would have been to streamline it as respectful a way as possible, to modernize it to the pacing that modern audiences would expect out of a movie. And I think that is the craziest, ballsiest, like, calling your shot, or taking your one shot and being like, you know, I got a blank check and this is what I want to do. And, like, you know,
yeah, I think it was an interesting thing to do.
Certainly
wise financially, possibly not.
Yeah, and it is more of like, I don't love the movie. Like, I'll take the original Psycho any day.
Yeah,
I love what the movie stands for, and what the remake, what it stands for, and what it is, and how ballsy it was, and how you know, gutsy it was, and just how like, it was just like, you know, I don't know that he did a lot after that, but I feel like on some level he was probably, you know, satisfied.
Yeah, I feel like as it's an interesting artistic achievement. As a moviegoer, I'm like, but
yes. But Friday the 13th remake, I believe that they did a swerve where they faked Pamela Voorhees, and then Jason was the actual killer, or maybe they just outright made him the killer. I don't recall. I have elected not to watch it, because I've heard enough bad things about it.
Well, that seems to be the way when they remake movies from like the 70s and 80s, and they do them today. They change just enough about the plot.
Yes.
That it's not the same movie, but it's not different enough to be really a fresh take. It's just dumb.
Yeah. Yes. And it potentially alienates the fans of the original who would potentially come and actually be on board for a remake if it was done correctly.
Yeah.
And it alienates them for the sake of the new fan, who really shouldn't be your core audience for a remake of that nature. Basically, don't remake movies in Hollywood, because there's almost no way to win. Every now and then one wins.
Yeah.
One does well, but there's almost no way to win at remakes in Hollywood.
No.
Almost not. All right.
Yeah. Anyway, so that is Friday the 13th.
It is.
I'm not a fan. Dave clearly is.
I mean, it's not one of my favorite movies, but I enjoy it, and I respect it for its contribution, and et cetera, et cetera.
But so y'all, we would love to know what you think about it. Have you seen the remake? Have you seen any of the other 50 bazillion installments in the franchise?
Did you play the video game?
Oh my God.
Either of the video games. Game? There's two of them. There's one for.
Tell me there wasn't like a lunchbox or a sleeping bag
totally.
Oh God.
There's a video game for the NES, for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Oh. Sorry to interrupt your outro here, but in which Jason is like has purple skin and is in a blue jumpsuit.
Ew.
And it is extremely crazy and difficult. And there is a modern video game, which is what they call an asymmetrical multiplayer game, where one person plays as Jason and the other people play as counselors trying to escape. So it would be like 5 counselors versus 1 Jason. And then Jason has like supernatural Jason powers where he can like see the people through walls and like all kinds of crazy crap.
Okay, I didn't need to know.
And you try to escape. You try to escape from Jason.
I didn't need to know any of that.
But now you do.
All right.
What are you going to do with it?
I'm going to try to forget that I knew it.
You can't.
Anyway, yeah. Were there any of the deaths that you cheered for? Did you cheer when Ned was dead? I certainly did. But we would love to know what you think. So drop us a line. You can tweet at us or drop us an email. Our handle is it Twitter or Gmail? It's the same. YSMY Podcast for You Show Me Yours podcast. Let us know what you think about this movie, any others that we've talked about, or just, let us know you're there. We'd love to hear that too. And our new episodes are traditionally every other Wednesday, but in October, we have episodes every Wednesday.
Wow.
So a week from today, there's a new one, and we're going to be watching
Hellraiser. Clive Barker's Hellraiser.
Okay. All I know is the guy with pins in his face.
Yep. Pin face. That's what they call him.
Right.
Old
Pin face.
Remember Pin face?
Yeah.
He's a bad guy.
Yeah. I know when I was in school, we used to stick straight pins like in our thumbs.
Like through the top layer of skin.
I was pin. I'm old crazy pin thumb.
I'm old crazy.
Candy.
I'm a pin. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, still not that. But we're going to be talking about Hellraiser. Yeah. Typically we. I'm sorry.
Legendary outro.
You interrupted me. You ruined my groove. Fault. It is.
It's me and Pinface.
It is.
It's just us, the two of us, derailing your outro here.
And Pin Thumb over here. So, yeah, you can.
I think you already said all the stuff about emailing and all that.
I did.
Next episode, tune in.
I did. We're on most of the major podcast providers, specifically Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Which is her favorite.
Yes,
She likes the Spotify. You usually say Spotify, which is my favorite.
Did I? Okay.
I like it when you say it.
All right. Anyway, okay. Everyone stop listening by this point. Rate, review, subscribe, give us some love. We need to be loved. That's it. We'll see you next time. I'm so sorry, you guys. This
is a 2-beer podcast.
This is possibly the worst outro I've ever done.
This is what happens when she's had any alcohol before we record a podcast.
Also, it's very late. It's past my bedtime.
It is.
Okay. And with that, I'm going to go to sleep, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. This has been You Show Me.
I'm just going to say bye, okay? Bye. I
don't even know what's so funny.
Was it Pen Face? Of course. This is all going in the episode. I haven't even started the outro music yet. This is the outro music. You're laughing is the And on that note, I feel like I just want to use this as a backdrop and just record the the music outro thing. The You Show Me Yours podcast features uplifting electronic indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io.
My ribs hurt.